Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines and, most importantly, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak to transportation professionals on this show, as well as my twice-a-week long-form podcast, because I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. All right, you guys, what is up? Good morning, Tracy St. Clair over on YouTube. James Courier, what is going on? Micah Campo, good morning to you. Flo, good day and happy Wednesday. It is a happy Wednesday today. We got freight moving. We're quoting nonstop. Talk about a tale of 24 hours. You know, this week has been, frankly, the first 2 months of this year have been, it's either all gas or nothing. I swear, you guys. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's the realities of building a business, you guys. It comes in spurts and everything. And, you know, speaking of building a business, I got a very special guest for you guys here today. I got, you know, a gentleman who I've been connected with a long time on social media. I think all of you guys are probably connected to him at the end of the day. And, you know, we actually met in person in Houston for the first time. We've communicated a bunch over the years, and we actually met in Houston for the first time in person. And he recently started a new venture here. So with that being said, I got my man Tim Perkins on the show, and extra credit because he is in orange. Let's go.
I understood the assignment, Chris. I understood
it. More people need to, Tim. More people need to. They don't know what it does to me. You know,
absolutely.
Early on, Sonny Sharma, he tunes in almost every single day. He owns Zems Inc. And it was like, I think 3 years ago in San Diego at the TIA conference, he started Orange Shirt Gang, and that's what he says. So now that's like a thing now for anything freight coaches, the Orange Shirt Gang. So now you're in, man. I love it.
Well, good. Yeah, I got all my swag and apparel on the way here. It should be here Friday, so I'll make sure I get your size so I can go ahead and send you some stuff. But yeah, man, I knew for the show definitely was doing orange.
Dude, I love it, man. So what's good? What like we got a new venture here, and
It's been awesome, honestly. So, you know, most of my background was initially in headhunting. So I did Fortune 500 headhunting, placing director to C-level talent for almost 10 years. So I built a LinkedIn network of 36,000 connections that are all that manager to C-level in supply chain. So I don't connect with anything outside of that industry. And so when I realized that these are all decision makers on where do I buy my fleet, where do I lease my trailers, my chassis, while I'm looking for warehouse space, while I need truck parking, M&A opportunities for growth. And I realized like these are all signature authority executives that I can offer tons of solutions and suppliers and products to. And so it was about 1.5 years ago, and one of my customers said, "Hey, Tim, I'm having a hard time finding multi-temp trailers." And soon enough, I found 25 of them. I had a carrier need 100 parking spaces, found them. Somebody needed 2 million square foot of warehouse space, found it. And so I started realizing like, man, I really do have a awesome LinkedIn network, that this LinkedIn family, they just have so much to offer. And I don't think people understand how to maximize their network. And so I really want to take advantage of helping organizations source as a one-stop shop. And carriers are by far probably my biggest target audience, but there's a whole lot of other industries also this can service.
Dude, I think that, because I remember back a couple of years ago, man, you were, because I always knew you as the headhunter right away. And then you're like, and then the more and more we communicated, you're like, all of these people come to me with all of these questions about they need help with sourcing, you know, all of these other things. And it's like, sure, you were always like, you knew somebody for everything. And I like, and it's that networking effect. And I would say this, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, Tim. I mean, I think networking is the number one thing you can do as an entrepreneur. Getting to know people literally everywhere I think it's because you would be shocked on how many people actually will help you if you're willing to ask for it. But B,
Sure.
if you're going to build a business, you're going to come up with a situation that you're not going to know what to do. It's inevitable. And you need to know who to reach out to, or someone who can at least introduce you to somebody. Because again, if you're talking about leasing a warehouse or buying a fleet, or you're making any change to your company, and if you've never been through it before, you don't want to Google, right? Like, you want to go to somebody you trust, because we're talking about multi-million-dollar decisions here.
Absolutely. Yeah. The network, you said it best. The power of the network. One of my slogans is maximize your network, because it is, who do you know, who can make that introduction? And that's all it is. My service is probably 98% free to whoever needs it, because I'm connected to the suppliers and the product and the service offering. So these companies already pay commissions and finder's fees to their own sales team. So if I'm operating as a sales arm for these companies, it's allowing me to say, hey, I will find whatever you need me to find, or my team will, for free, because it's, as long as it's within your budget. And these sales vendors that I've vetted and I've worked with and I trust, they've taken care of my customers. And so it allows me to have my parking opportunities, my warehouse opportunities, my M&A, my real estate, procurement of assets, all of that is right here. But I just know that I'm connected with the right people that I trust, that I've transacted with. And all in all, it's allowed me to just help my customers and the LinkedIn network that I have.
So what's the thing that you've been asked about to help source with most so far? Like, gotta be something.
I would say equipment is by far probably the biggest, but truck parking, I'm sure I know a lot of truck parking providers out there has kind of come into the market. And honestly, 3PLs, what 3PL provider, how do you really differentiate between 3PLs, because they all have a very similar strategic advantage. And so I think those are probably the most common. M&A has picked up a little bit because, anyone that follows brokerages, the brokerage valuation has decreased immensely in the last year and a half. And so companies that are looking to expand are obviously going after some M&A opportunities as well.
So I think for a broker out there, or heck, even a trucking company out there that's never needed to find temporary warehouse space, because I think it's inevitable that you will be in a position where your receiver can't take the freight, or for whatever reason, and you're going to need to find temporary or short-term, and because the driver's not going to be willing to take it back to the shipper. They got something else going on in that area. Is that something where, if you're in that position, they could reach out to you, and then you're going to be like,
absolutely. Probably the coolest story that I had last week is I had a customer reach out. So he needed 10 dry vans, but then he needed parking for the 10 dry vans. But then I talked about his fleet, and he said, well, I'd love to figure out how to decrease my carbon emissions, my footprint. And I said, well, I have a really great provider that's already decreased, I think it's 10% or 15% on average, increased MPG, guaranteed 10% or money back. And so this one customer that needed dry vans, truck parking, they need to increase their fuel efficiency and decrease their CO2 footprint, all in one call. So it's all about maximizing that relationship. So instead of me just saying, yep, I got your dry vans, bye, I wanted to learn more about the business. What are the vans doing? What are they hauling? Where are they going? What other challenges do you have? And when you really start to ask questions to learn the business versus a transactional approach, you really get to open the door to making a true long-term relationship instead of transactional.
So how do you source the facilities, right? Like, how do you, and that, like, obviously I'm not asking for trade secrets or anything, but like, how do you tell, are these guys legit or not? Right. Cause there's a lot of people. Yeah, go for it.
So it's funny. So I had to do this on the candidate side a lot, because some candidates, like, it's a compliment in a weird way. You're just really good interviewers. You actually might not be the best employee for the job, but you interview very well. And so I have to do background checks, right? Just like a candidate. So the same thing with a 3PL. It doesn't take me with my network very long to see if a 3PL is actually doing the quality of service that they say they're doing it. Just like with this decrease of carbon footprint, increased miles per gallon, I called multiple fleets that use this product, and they said, Tim, this absolutely has been a game changer for me. And so I have a way to validate really just within the same network to say, hey, who bought trailers from you? And so I go find those companies. I say, hey, where do you buy your equipment from? And the other benefit, especially on the equipment side, is I'm connected to so many carriers that have these 3 to 5 year leases. And once they're off the lease, they just turn around and sell them. And so to have access to the network of when fleets are coming off a lease to turn around and resell, that's a whole nother market. That's not an auction. That's not a dealer. That's not a wholesaler. That's usually a relationship only has access to that. And so that's why my pricing, because it's a free service to me, but I can beat a lot of pricing that Fortune 500 companies have because they're not really understanding where the best deals are, to where I have that network that can allow me access to most things that normal people can't find.
So how do you decide what markets to really operate in, right? Because it seems like it could be warehousing and carbon emissions and M&A, and then that could turn into, I need a tire guy, I need a roadside guy. How do you really kind of like keep your scope, strong from that perspective?
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be the most unique next 6 months, right? Is now that this is public and official, it's like, okay, how do I efficiently do this and make sure I'm going after the right direction? A lot of it is just relationships. So I take my premier customers that have trusted me, because at the end of the day, I was called as a headhunter to find equipment. I was called as a headhunter. Like I remember there was this company in South Carolina, hospital, and they were running out of sterile water for the children's hospital. And I had to go find sterile water for a hospital in South Carolina. And I'm thinking they trust me enough, a headhunter, to go find these things. And so a lot of it is understanding the market. Like the M&A picked up when this freight recession happened. And I'm like, okay, well, this makes sense. The demand is down. So this is where you get better deals. So if you're trying to grow, so sometimes I do let the market dictate. Same with bankruptcies. So I started doing liquidations of warehouses. So when you have Zulily, GameStop, Bed Bath & Beyond that have all these huge distribution centers that they need to either liquidate inventory or somebody move in, because I know the executives that work there, I have access to those distribution centers to liquidate either as a whole or to liquidate their product. And so those are the kind of things that the market sometimes helps me dictate where to put the energy.
I've done a couple of warehouse liquidations. Those shipments are wild. I remember because like the drivers, like they're literally just throwing racking in my trailer right now. I'm like, bro, they will sign the bill of lading. That's it. Just go. This is where it's heading.
It is.
I look at it like this, Tim. I mean, because I think you've probably been asked this question. I know I've been asked this question a lot is how do you decide what business to start, right? Because a lot of people want to be self-employed. A lot of people want to go out there and do their own thing. How do you decide, right? Like what would you recommend to somebody out there who's thinking like, damn, I could possibly do this, or maybe I want to go in and buy a company?
Yeah, if you take faith-based out of it, right? Because I would be lying to say that prayer and discernment was not part of a lot of my decision. If you're really passionate about something, I think that's a huge start. Now, I will say sometimes your passion needs to be a hobby. Some people think, well, I really love this. I'll die to do it. And it's like, it just might not be the right time. So I really think looking at what relationships do you have, but the biggest logical, what I realized was when demand is high for something, but there's a low supply of service or product, the logic makes sense that now you have a need and a pain point. So if you are in a market where you really love something or an idea, or you have assessed the pain point and you can create a solution that either doesn't exist or the satisfaction customer experience isn't there, you automatically have a niche, which gives you hope. But I will tell you, a lot of people talk about this, work-life balance and take Fridays off and things that I don't understand. That's not the way to entrepreneurship. I mean, it is a hustle. It is a grind. It is weekends. And I don't say that braggingly. I'm not proud of the weekends that I've worked before. I'm not proud of 1 a.m. doing calls in Hawaii because they need something 5 hours behind me. But I do understand to get to something that I want, I have to do something I've never done. And so I think that if you can balance your family time to make sure there's quality, because, a lot of people say, well, your weekends are for your family. I'm like, no, I think that's a made up thing. I can take my daughter to get a pedicure, or I can take my son to a baseball game on a Thursday at 3:00 and build more quality time than having to say, well, I just won't work Saturday. So I think that understanding quality over a day of the week is also a big thing that I've recognized that helped me do what I do.
Yeah, days of the week don't really exist if you want to go out and do it on your own, because not everybody has a book of business. Not everybody has customers right away. And realistically, the first time that you're going to get traction with somebody is it's going to be on a Friday night or a Saturday morning or a weekend. And if you're truly committed to whatever it takes, because that is the mentality you need to build a business, whatever it takes, because not everybody out there has funding that they can play with, right? Because I think that there's this facade that like, oh, I'll just raise money. You don't get that opportunity. I mean, I'm bootstrapping for a reason, and I'm going to continue to bootstrap because it's like, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't like the cap. I understand capital raise and private equity and VCs are part of business. I understand that. There's a guy that posts on LinkedIn a lot, and it's like a congratulations on all the VC capital raise to the following companies. And it's so hard for me not to comment. You're relinquishing power, the rights of your business to somebody else. I much would prefer bootstrapping, saying I did this. I was able to do this and build this on my own. Again, not saying that capital raising to buy equipment is not needed or funding is needed in an area. But I think people rely on this. Well, I'll just raise money and do it. And it's like, no, sometimes you got to put in the work. You got to put in the failure. I mean, I tell people I want to fail as fast as I can. I want to be the dumbest and poorest person in my circle. And if you keep that mentality and you love to fail because it lets you learn, you can be someone that's very dangerous and you can figure things out.
Yeah, I was just talking to a guy yesterday that I interviewed. His interview will be out in a couple weeks, but we were talking about that specifically. And from my perspective, I'm like, I don't know. And this is just my personal opinion. I don't know if I would effectively use $10 million in raised capital as well as I would if I had to work for that 10 million and had it to disperse after I had put in the work. And again, this is just what works for me. I know myself, and I don't know if I would appreciate it or use it as effectively as I could if I had built that up on my own. And I think that that's where the real value comes from. And you talked about when things go wrong. Like I literally put a post out there about that this morning because, newsflash, guys, I talk about this all the time, but building shit is hard. All right. I don't know why some people think building a business is easy, but it's hard for me. Maybe it's because I went to public school, but it's hard for me to do this. But I also see all of the value of when things go wrong. How can I improve? That's my first mindset shift now is, hey, this happened. How can I improve? How do we debrief? How do we change our processes? How do we move forward? Most importantly, because it's never as bad as you think, but it's never as good as you think either. And you need to constantly go in and assess that and try and keep as neutral of a mindset as you possibly can throughout this.
Absolutely. I played baseball in college, and I coach now. As a pitcher, you're constantly trying to adjust your mechanics and trying to figure out, what did I do wrong? What sequence was this? Why did I throw this pitch in this count? Why didn't I read the hands better? Why didn't I understand what happened last at bat? And so I think that has helped me a little bit understand, like you just said, what's the process? What adjustments do I make after failure? And then do it again. But you have to have thick skin anytime you build something. And you have to look at it from your customer's approach. Like, brokerages, I think, have such a tremendous value. And I understand that there's hate on the brokerage side. But if I'm a broker, I'm looking at my carriers thinking, how can I help you? Not by just getting you contracts and getting you good lanes, but I'm asking them questions. How is your fleet running? Are you guys parking at the most effective place you need to for these lanes? I'm looking at the entire picture of their business, because I'm thinking the more my carrier thinks I care about them as a business and their longevity, they're going to realize I'm not in here just for the transactional approach of load by load. I'm actually trying to help them with whatever their business is, even if it doesn't directly benefit my pockets. Indirectly, it shows that relationship.
I think more brokers need to take a carrier first approach out there. I really
100%.
I talk about it a lot, man, that carriers and customers are 1A and 1B of importance. I get it, you guys. I understand how this stuff works. I've been doing this for a very long time. But I have yet to work in a market where there wasn't an opportunity to onboard a shipper I have yet to find time to, if you railroad carriers where you can miraculously pull trucks when it's a tight market. And I see the real value, because it's like, man, I deal with this right now, right? Like I would rather work with the same trucking companies time and time again. I would rather work with them at my own expense, in the sense of I want to overpay them, because I know the flip side of what happens when you book a cheap carrier on a load and what that can actually cost. Because if you're looking at a typical sales cycle here, you guys, say 6 months, right? 6 months from the first time they answer their phone or their email until you close. That's 6 months worth of work. And you're going to really risk all of that to save $50? Because that's really what it boils down to, right? We're talking $50 or $100 difference between a quality and non-quality provider out there. And a lot of people will, man. They'll look at the last 6 months as whatever, I'll just find another customer. I don't have that luxury, right? Like I'm out here doing, and I said this the other day, man. On the low end, I did 11 to 12,000 outreaches last year. 11 to 12,000 outreaches. You know what I mean? So it's like you're going to put forth all of that effort, and then that doesn't include site visits. That doesn't include traveling to play. That doesn't include any of that stuff. And you're going to do all of that because you're going to try and railroad somebody? Like, I don't get it, man. I don't get the methodology.
No, it's the same with companies. As a headhunter, there was so many times that there would be customers that would pay lower than market value because it was like, well, I'm going to let them earn it with a year of performance, or I'm going to look at their KPIs and metrics. And then I'm like, so you want to underpay someone, but then expect them to give you 100%. I said, that doesn't make sense. Well, what if they're unemployed? Okay, so you want to take advantage of somebody, and that's the culture. And so it really is funny when people try to save, you're jumping over dollars to save dimes. That's a real, it's what happens. And it's unfortunate, because I'm 100%, when you said overpay, that's how you get loyalty. That's how you get trust. And at the end of the day, that to me is what matters. Loyalty, trust, integrity, communication, transparency. That's it. Anytime I do a sales call, I don't offer the sale at the first time. I just got to get to know you. I might have someone else to introduce you to because I'm not the right person. Actually, I had a guy message me this morning asking me to hop on a call to help him with the RFP process for 3PLs because he's building a new software. I just said, I'm not your guy, but this guy right here for $100 will give you 30 minutes of his time. And, he used to be at Wayfair. He used to handle all of that. And, so they're doing that this morning. And it's just being able to be honest. I could have took the guy's money and just gave him my opinion, because that's what a consultant is. It's giving you an opinion. But I think that trust and that loyalty to just say, hey, I'm not your guy, but I wish you the best, that holds weight as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, man. I think that knowing your capabilities is another phenomenal piece of advice for business, because again, when you're going out there and I'm not saying like don't take risks, right? Like everything's a risk, but like you put forth all of this effort, and then you're only as good as your last shipment or your last interaction with somebody. And that's in business entirely. That is legitimately across the board. That's not just a trucking thing too. So it's like, I think there's a lot of power in saying I can't do that, but here's somebody who can, and I think, go ahead.
No, you're right. I mean, and that's honestly how the thought of Sourcify became, was like, I just want to be the guy that when they say, I know a guy that can, I'm the guy that can, because I know somebody. And that's normally what it is. I like to just say, hey, I'm not the guy that directly does it, but I know exactly who can help you to get there.
So how do you see this going, man? Like you're clearly a visionary type, Tim. You're not,
sure.
You're out here. Where does this go, man? How do you build this out?
At first it's going to be the grunt work. At some point, what I want to either build and I don't mind partnerships when this exists, but I'm taking this entire supplier network, because there's companies out there that do it just for warehouse and 3PLs. There's truck parking websites everywhere. Like there's a lot of variations of everything that I do, but there is not a true one-stop shop platform that actually can connect buyers and sellers within supply chain. And so the big picture would be to have a way to have these suppliers listed that are vetted. They have to go through a strict vetting process. And then you have the customers. And so then you have a platform to where it's not me putting in personal time and hours transacting the relationships. It's more of stepping back, whether it's a subscription service for the suppliers to pay to be marketed, something around that stint. Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to be the guy working 60, 70 hours a week, which is why the investment opportunities that I also offer, now that I've got into real estate and I've been able to look at a lot of executives that have maxed out their 401k, they maxed out their IRA, they have their second home, they have their dream vehicle, and they're like, Tim, I get a 6-figure bonus every year. What do I do? I've been able to create opportunities that beats the stock market that I've done now for a few years that I can say, hey, here's an option. Same with early stage, companies. There's a company I'm working with now, Offshift. I mean, they're an unbelievable company. You've probably met Mark a few times, but when I saw the lifehood or the life expectancy of drivers is 16 years younger than anybody else, that killed me, man. I was like, we have drivers that we just know that in their role, they have a 60% higher chance of having diabetes and 50% being obese, the highest obesity industry. And so when I started to see what this guy does in the early stage, now there's 23 trucking companies that are jumping on board. And so I try to vet these early stage companies because I am a believer in those kind of organizations that are bootstrapped, that are trying to raise money the right way.
Yeah. No, man, I love it, dude. I think that, what you've built up over your career, because you've worked in the transportation space, you've worked in that leadership style space as a headhunter for as long as you did, man. There's a service for that, because it's like when I was doing sales consulting, I mean, you're asked by people all the time, hey, who do you know in insurance? Who do you know for factoring, TMS, everything else under the sun? You need, and it is like, you need people. You need to know who's out there, because especially if you're going to be in a business and I want people to envision this, like your customer, you're a broker, your customer comes to you and says, hey, I need warehouse space in Charleston, South Carolina, or Norfolk, Virginia, or something like that. Where do you turn? Especially if you've never done it before. How do you know what questions to ask and stuff like that? So it's like, for me, this is just one of those things. If you're going to be effective in business, if you're going to be effective in sales, at least inside of your vertical, inside of transportation, think about everything from pallets up to engines in trucks. Like, think that vertical up there, and then get to know people inside of that, because you just never know.
That's it. I mean, it's look at the entire supply chain of where you're going from pickup to like the whole piece. And you start to realize there's just a lot of opportunities. And that's why I'm telling people that if you have a really good product or service that you're just having a hard time getting it out there to the network, let's talk, because I can sit there and look at the product, ask questions, bring other people that I know to ask questions, and really see if this is something we can push out. And same thing if you're looking to procure something, but you just don't have that network, or your procurement team doesn't specialize in something, that's where those conversations get to take place that can really generate not just revenue, because just like I have no problem scratching someone else's back. If someone says, hey, Tim, I know a guy that has the dry vans, I have no problem making sure they're compensated for it. So building out a sales team that can say, hey, Tim, I know warehouse space, I can find parking. And so now you're increasing the ability to generate commissions off of just doing the exact same thing, providing a free service to the customer by utilizing the services offered by the supplier, which is their goal anyway. So it truly is a win-win. I know that's a cliche term, but it really is when the buyer is happy because they get a great product at a great price with great quality and trust, and these suppliers are happy because they're selling a good product or service, it truly is a win-win. And so that's the big goal, is just to make sure both sides are happy with the quality of service.
I love it, man. How does anybody reach out to you, Tim, to find out more about what you got going on?
Yeah, my email is tim@sourcify.net. My website should be launched in about 22 days and counting. And then I plan on being at TMC next week. I'll be at TIA, CSCMP, got some cool speaking engagements coming on and some partnerships we'll be launching. So, but honestly, LinkedIn is probably where most people get in touch with me the most. So.
Perfect, man. And hey, if you guys need to get in touch with Tim and you can't find him for some reason, hit me up. I'll put you guys in direct contact with him. That is going to be it for today, you guys. We got a normal show tomorrow. We'll be breaking down some headlines. Friday, though, for the Q&A show, I got my friend who's a shipper coming on. All right, so any questions you guys want to ask an actual shipper, somebody who decides if your pitch is worthwhile or not, come on Friday show, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central. As always, guys, if you guys got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there to your network. This is how we grow, but most importantly, this is how we help more people, is because if you saw value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.
See you guys. Thanks, Chris.